The waiting room at the JAG courthouse smells like disinfectant and old coffee. Gray chairs lined up like soldiers. Gray walls, gray everything. I sit in the back corner where shadows gather, hands folded in my lap, watching officers stride past in their pressed uniforms with purpose written across their faces. They don't see me, they never do. My name is Claire Maddox, oldest child of the Maddox family. Former officer, though most people don't know that part. To my family, I'm the one who quit. The one who couldn't handle it. They told everyone I failed. They never said it to my face, they didn't have to. They just stopped saying anything about me at all. Silence is louder than words when you're the ghost at your own family table. I'm wearing civilian clothes today, simple gray blouse, black slacks. Nothing that draws attention, no uniform to announce who I was or what I've done. Just fabric that lets me disappear into the background while my brother Daniel stands trial, 20 feet away behind those oak doors. The brass nameplate outside reads, United States versus Major Daniel Maddox. Court-martial for mishandling classified documents. The kind of charge that ends careers and destroys legacies. The kind that makes fathers stop bragging about their sons at the officers' club. But I'm not here for Daniel. I'm not here for justice either. I'm here because sometimes the truth has been buried so long it forgets how to breathe. And today, it might finally surface. A young lieutenant walks past, clipboard in hand, and glances at me with that look. The one that says you don't belong here. His eyes linger on my empty lapels. My civilian shoes the absence of everything that would mark me as worthy of this space. Excuse me, ma'am, he says. Voice polite but firm. Are you family of the accused? Sister, I reply. He nods, makes a note, moves on. Doesn't ask my name, doesn't need to. In his world, I'm just another face in the gallery. Another relative hoping their soldier doesn't fall too far. If only he knew. The oak doors swing open. Officers file out for recess. Their conversations hushed but urgent. I catch fragments, classified protocols, drone operations, security breach. Technical words that would mean nothing to most people sitting in this waiting room. But I know those protocols. I helped write some of them. Through the doorway I see Daniel at the defendant's table. Still straight-backed, still proud, even with his career hanging by a thread. He looks older than I remember, tired. The weight of accusation has carved lines around his eyes that weren't there at Christmas dinner 2 years ago, the last time we were in the same room. The last time anyone in my family looked directly at me. If you're still listening to this, if you've made it this far, maybe this sounds familiar. Not the court-martial, not the military, just the feeling of being erased in your own home, of watching your family close ranks around an empty space where you used to stand. Maybe you know what it's like to be the disappointment they don't talk about. The doors are closing again, the trial resumes, and I sit here in my gray corner, invisible, as always, waiting for the moment when 20 years of silence finally breaks. Because truth has a voice of its own. And today, it's about to speak. The recess stretches longer than expected. I close my eyes and let the memory surface, the one they all think they know. Officer Candidate School, Fort Benning. Spring of 2004. Everyone believes I quit after 11 months. Couldn't handle the pressure, they said. Not cut out for command. The story my family tells at dinner parties is always the same. Claire tried the military, but it wasn't for her. She's doing admin work somewhere now. That's the lie that's easier than the truth. What really happened was a Tuesday morning in March. I was called out of formation by a captain I'd never seen before. No explanation, just orders to report to Building 47, a nondescript brick structure I'd walked past 100 times without noticing. Inside, 3 men in civilian clothes sat around a metal table, no nameplates, no insignia, just cold eyes and manila folders thick with redacted pages. Ms. Maddox, the one in the middle, said, voice flat as winter. Your psychological profile indicates an unusual capacity for compartmentalization. Your tactical assessments score in the 98th percentile. Your language aptitude test suggests native-level proficiency in Arabic and Russian. I said nothing, waited. We're offering you a different kind of service. No public record, no ceremonies, no family notifications. He slid a single sheet of paper across the table. Your official record will show voluntary withdrawal from OCS. Personal reasons. Everyone will assume you couldn't handle it. The choice was simple: traditional military career with ribbons and recognition, or disappear into work that would never see daylight. I signed. Within a week, I was officially Claire Maddox's failed officer candidate. Unofficially, I became something else entirely. The training happened in places that don't exist on maps. A compound in Virginia where we learned to speak without accents and kill without sound. A facility in Nevada where computer screens showed satellite feeds of cities most Americans couldn't pronounce. By Christmas 2004, while Daniel was celebrating his commissioning as a second lieutenant with champagne and family photos, I was learning how to forge documents in 3 languages and memorize building layouts from aerial reconnaissance. My first deployment was Syria, not the Syria you see on the news, the quiet Syria, where information flows like water through cracks in stone. I spent 8 months as Sarah Mitchell Agricultural Development Consultant, filing reports on irrigation systems while mapping militant supply routes through my hotel window. The work was surgical, precise. We didn't kick down doors or call in airstrikes. We listened to phone calls, photographed license plates, and turned enemy assets with nothing more than the right conversation in the right cafe. I was good at it. Better than good. In Ukraine, I posed as a petroleum engineer named Clara Mills. 14 months of analyzing soil samples while identifying Russian intelligence operatives embedded in energy companies. I lived in a studio apartment in Kiev, eating borscht, and teaching myself to think in 3 different languages depending on who was listening. Northern Africa was harder. Libya, specifically Benghazi, before it became a household name. The cover was humanitarian aid worker. The reality was coordinating extraction routes for assets whose covers had been blown. 7 successful operations, 0 casualties. I survived roadside bombs that left craters the size of swimming pools. I survived interrogations where the wrong answer meant disappearing into a basement no one would ever find. I survived months of isolation so complete that I forgot the sound of my own voice, but I never survived the silence from home. While I was documenting arms shipments in Damascus, Daniel was promoted to first lieutenant. My parents threw a party, posted photos on Facebook, called the local newspaper. While I was coordinating intelligence that prevented 3 separate terrorist attacks in Tripoli, Daniel made captain. Another celebration. Another round of proud phone calls to relatives. I sent birthday cards from whatever city I was supposed to be in. Generic postcards with messages like, "Hope you're well," and "Thinking of you." I used fake return addresses and mailed them through diplomatic pouches to maintain my cover. They never responded. Christmas 2008, I was officially Karen Walsh, NGO coordinator in Sarajevo. Unofficially, I was tracking weapon smuggling routes through the Balkans. My phone rang at 3 a.m., a rare personal call cleared through secure channels. It was my mother. "Daniel's engaged," she said without preamble. "The wedding's in June. You should try to make it if your job allows." She didn't ask where I was, didn't ask what I was doing, didn't ask if I was safe or lonely or proud of the work that kept her sleeping peacefully in her suburban bed. "I'll try," I said. The line went quiet. Then, "Claire, are you happy with your choices?" I stared out my window at the snow-covered streets of a city still healing from war. In the distance, I could see the cemetery where thousands of white headstones marked lives, cut short by hatred and ideology. "I'm exactly where I need to be," I told her. She hung up without saying goodbye. I missed the wedding. I was in Yemen posing as a water systems analyst while documenting Iranian weapon shipments. I sent a gift crystal candlesticks from Pottery Barn, ordered online, and shipped directly to their address. The card said, "Congratulations, love, Claire." Daniel's promotion to major warranted a feature in the base newspaper. "Rising star continues family tradition of excellence." The article mentioned his father's distinguished Air Force career, his mother's service as a combat medic, and his younger sister's upcoming commission as a lieutenant. I wasn't mentioned at all. By then, I'd stopped expecting to be seen. Invisibility had become my superpower and my curse. I could walk through airports without being remembered, sit in restaurants without being noticed, exist in the spaces between other people's attention. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd become the most effective intelligence operative in my unit, precisely because I'd learned to disappear so completely that even my own family had forgotten I existed. But survival without acknowledgement leaves marks that don't show on medical reports, scars that never quite heal, And sometimes in courtrooms where truth is supposed to matter, those scars finally find their voice. The voicemail came on a Tuesday morning in March 3 weeks ago. I was making coffee in my Alexandria apartment when my phone buzzed with the familiar but unwelcome sound of a message from home. My mother's voice crisp and efficient as always. "Claire, it's Mom. Daniel's court-martial is scheduled for next week at Fort Bragg. You can come if you want to. Just don't make it about you. The family's been through enough. No hello, no how are you. No acknowledgement that we hadn't spoken in 14 months. I played the message twice, then deleted it. For 3 days, I didn't respond. I went through my routine morning briefings, intelligence analysis, afternoon reports on Eastern European arms trafficking. The work that had become my anchor in a world where I existed without existing. But on Friday, I found myself staring at the small wooden box on my bedroom dresser, the one I never opened anymore. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a single military patch, black background, silver embroidery. A stylized flame crossed with a dagger. Operation Firelight. My hands trembled as I lifted it. Even after all these years, even after all the missions that followed, this one still had teeth. Firelight was my darkest hour. The mission that almost broke me. The one that never appeared in any official record, never got mentioned in any debrief, never received any recognition, because success meant pretending it never happened. Syria, 2011. 3 American contractors captured by a militant cell operating out of Aleppo. Standard extraction protocols had failed. Diplomatic channels were dead ends. The clock was running out. I was embedded with a local NGO, perfect cover for reconnaissance. It took me 6 weeks to identify the location, map the compound, and develop extraction routes. But when the moment came when our team finally had the shot, I discovered something that changed everything. The contractors weren't just random captives. They were CIA operatives running an unsanctioned weapons program. Their capture wasn't coincidence. It was retaliation. I had to choose extract 3 American lives and risk exposing a broader intelligence network, or let them die to preserve operations that were protecting thousands of others. I chose the mission over the men. The official report stated that the contractors died during a failed rescue attempt. Heroic efforts, impossible circumstances, no blame assigned. I received a classified commendation that went directly into a vault, and a promotion that would never appear on any public record. I also received something else, the knowledge that I could make the hardest choices and live with them. That I could carry the weight of necessary decisions without breaking. The families of those contractors still don't know their loved ones died, not because rescue was impossible, but because I decided their lives were worth less than the mission. That patch represents the moment I became someone my family would never understand. Someone who operates in spaces where moral absolutes turn to sand. I packed it in my travel bag, along with civilian clothes and a hotel reservation I'd made, without knowing why. The drive to Fort Bragg took 4 hours. 4 hours of remembering family dinners where Daniel's accomplishments filled every conversation, while my empty chair spoke volumes about their disappointment. At the main gate, the MP checked my ID with the bored efficiency of someone who'd processed thousands of visitors. No recognition, no salute, just a temporary pass clipped to a visitor badge that marked me as civilian. "Ma'am, you'll need an escort to the courthouse," he said, gesturing toward a young corporal standing nearby. The escort was professional but distant. We walked in silence past buildings I'd trained in decades ago, past parade grounds, where I'd once stood at attention, past monuments to honor I'd never receive. First time back on base, the corporal asked, making conversation. Something like that. At the courthouse, he directed me to the public gallery entrance, not the main doors where family members of officers usually entered. The side entrance for civilians, for people who didn't belong in the inner circle of military justice. The waiting room was already filling with other spectators. I recognized some faces, family friends, fellow officers, people who'd watched Daniel's career with pride and my absence with relief. A junior officer, maybe a captain, glanced in my direction as he passed. He was young, probably graduated from OCS around the time I was supposed to. His eyes lingered on my civilian clothes, my lack of insignia, the absence of everything that would mark me as worthy of respect. He leaned toward another officer and muttered just loud enough for me to hear, "Isn't that Daniel's sister? The one who flunked out of OCS?" His companion shrugged. Heard she couldn't handle the pressure. Works some desk job now. They moved on their dismissal, complete and casual. I sat in my designated seat, Operation Firelight Patch, hidden in my pocket like a secret weapon. Around me, conversations buzzed about Daniel's case, about the charges, about how unfortunate it was that such a promising officer had found himself in this position. None of them knew that the real story wasn't about Daniel at all. None of them knew that in 20 minutes, when the proceedings began, the invisible sister in the back row would become the most important person in the room. But first, they would all have to learn what they'd never bothered to ask: who Claire Maddox really was. The courtroom fills with the rustle of pressed uniforms and hushed conversations. I watch from the back row as my parents take their seats in the front section reserved for family. My father sits rigid, shoulders squared in the posture that never left him even after retirement. My mother clutches a small purse, her knuckles white against the black leather. Neither of them looks back to acknowledge me. Daniel enters, flanked by his defense counsel, a sharp-eyed major who moves with the confidence of someone who's never lost a case. My brother looks smaller than I remember, diminished by the weight of accusation, but his spine is straight, his gaze forward. A Maddox, even in disgrace. All rise for the Honorable General Patricia Morrison. The room stands as one. General Morrison takes her seat at the bench, her presence commanding immediate silence. She's younger than I expected, maybe 50, with steel gray hair and eyes that seem to catalog every face in the room. Be seated. This court-martial will come to order. The charges are read with clinical precision: willful dereliction of duty, unauthorized disclosure of classified material, conduct prejudicial to good order and discipline. Each count carries years of prison time, the end of everything Daniel has worked toward. The prosecution's opening statement is delivered by Lieutenant Colonel James Reynolds. I recognize him before he speaks, older now, grayer, but the same arrogant tilt to his chin that I remember from Kandahar in 2015. Reynolds and I had clashed over an intelligence assessment that contradicted his preferred narrative. He'd wanted to paint a tribal leader as hostile. My analysis proved the man was actually feeding us information about Taliban movements. Reynolds had tried to have my report buried, claimed I was compromising operational security. He lost that fight. The tribal leader's intelligence prevented 3 IED attacks and saved dozens of American lives. Reynolds never forgot who made him look foolish. Now he stands before the court, laser-focused on destroying my brother's career. The defendant willfully and knowingly accessed classified drone protocol documents without authorization, copied sensitive operational parameters, and transmitted this information through unsecured channels. His presentation is methodical, devastating. Document trails, timestamps, digital forensics. Each piece of evidence builds toward an inevitable conclusion. Daniel is guilty. During a brief recess, Reynolds notices me. His eyes narrow with recognition, then suspicion. He approaches with the predatory confidence of a prosecutor who smells weakness. Claire Maddox, he says, voice low enough that nearby spectators can't hear. Interesting that you'd show up here. Family loyalty, or are you hoping to watch your brother burn? I meet his gaze without flinching. Just observing, Colonel. Right, his smile is cold. The sister who couldn't cut it in the real military here to watch someone who actually made something of himself fall. Must be satisfying. He walks away before I can respond, but his implication hangs in the air like smoke. To everyone watching, I'm the family failure who might be here for revenge. The afternoon session brings the defense's expert witness, Colonel Marcus Alden, a distinguished officer with 30 years of experience in military intelligence and drone operations. His testimony is designed to provide context to show that the protocols Daniel allegedly mishandled were outdated and non-sensitive. Alden is methodical professional. He flips through redacted case files, explaining technical details in language the court can understand. His voice is steady, authoritative. Then he stops mid-sentence. His eyes have caught something, a glimpse of black fabric silver embroidery. My jacket has shifted slightly, revealing a corner of the Operation Firelight patch I'd pinned inside my lapel. Without thinking, the silence stretches. Colonel Alden stares directly at me, his face cycling through confusion, recognition, and something close to shock. Colonel Alden, General Morrison prompts, please continue your testimony. But Alden isn't listening to the judge. He's staring at my patch like he's seen a ghost. Slowly, he sets down the case file, and walks toward the gallery, his footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. "That patch," he says, voice barely above a whisper. "Where did you get that?" Every head in the courtroom turns toward me. My parents' faces show confusion. Daniel looks bewildered. Reynolds wears the expression of a man watching his carefully constructed case develop unexpected complications. I don't answer. Don't move. Just meet Alden's eyes as he approaches. He's close enough now to read the embroidery clearly. The stylized flame crossed with a dagger. The small numbers beneath 2011. Recognition hits him like a physical blow. "Wait!" His voice grows louder, carrying across the silent courtroom. "You survived Firelight." The words land like artillery shells. General Morrison half rises from her bench. Reynolds freezes mid-step. Even the court reporter stops typing. In the front row, my mother's purse slips from her hands and hits the floor with a sound like a gunshot. "Colonel Alden," General Morrison says sharply, "return to the witness stand immediately." But Alden ignores her. He's staring at me with the reverence reserved for the dead returned to life. "Ma'am," he says, and his voice carries the weight of military protocol and personal awe. "I was told everyone from Firelight was KIA. The official report." "The official report," I say, quietly standing slowly, "was classified above your clearance level." The courtroom erupts. Whispered conversations, shuffling papers, the scrape of chairs as people turn to stare. Reynolds looks like he's swallowed glass. My father has gone completely pale. General Morrison's gavel comes down like thunder. "Order! This court will come to order," but the damage is done. The invisible sister, the family failure, the woman who couldn't handle officer candidate school, has just been identified as a survivor of an operation so classified that most of the people in this room don't even know it existed. Colonel Alden returns to the witness stand, but his eyes keep drifting back to me. His testimony continues, but now it carries different weight. He's no longer just an expert witness explaining technical protocols. He's a man who knows what it means to carry secrets that could shatter the comfortable assumptions of everyone around him. Reynolds tries to regain control of his narrative, but something fundamental has shifted. The prosecution's case against Daniel suddenly seems less certain, less clear-cut. Because if the family failure in the back row survived something called Firelight, something so classified that career officers have never heard of it, then maybe everything they thought they knew about the Maddox family was wrong. Maybe the real story was just beginning. As the session adjourns, I remain seated while the courtroom empties around me. My parents file out without looking back. Daniel is escorted away by his guards, but Colonel Alden lingers, his eyes still fixed on that small patch of fabric that represents 20 years of invisible service. Tomorrow the questions will begin. Tonight I'll prepare my answers. During the evening recess, Colonel Alden finds me in the empty corridor outside the courtroom. His approach is cautious, like someone approaching a monument they're not sure they're allowed to touch. "Ma'am," he says, voice low and respectful. "Could I have a word?" I nod, following him to a small conference room away from the dispersing crowd. He closes the door behind us, then turns to face me with an expression I haven't seen in years. Genuine recognition mixed with something close to awe. "I need to know," he says. "Are you really her Claire Maddox Firelight operational commander?" "Depends on your clearance level." He pulls out his phone, scrolls through secured files, shows me a classification level that makes my eyebrows rise slightly. He has access to things most colonels never see. "I was briefed on Firelight in 2018, he says. Partial disclosure case study on asymmetric intelligence operations. The report listed all personnel as KIA, combat fatalities during siege operations in Aleppo. That was the cover story. Then you..." He stops, runs a hand through his gray hair. "Jesus Christ, I've been telling people for years that Firelight was the perfect example of heroic sacrifice, that the entire team died, rather than compromise the mission. The mission was compromised long before we died." The words come out harder than I intend. Alden notices his expression shifting from awe to something more careful. "What really happened?" I look out the small window, watching evening shadows lengthen across the base. 24 years of silence, and now a single patch threatens to unravel everything. "2 of my operatives were captured during extraction," I say, finally. "Sergeant Mike Torres and Corporal Sarah Jenkins. Good soldiers, better people." The memory surfaces like oil on water, dark and inescapable. Syria, November 2011. Our intelligence network had been compromised by a double agent we'd trusted for months. The extraction was supposed to be routine 3 operatives out of Aleppo before our covers were blown completely. But routine doesn't exist in war zones. The ambush came at dawn. IEDs on the primary route, snipers on the alternate. Torres and Jenkins were providing rear security when shrapnel from a mortar round shredded Torres's leg, and Jenkins took a round through the shoulder. They were pinned down in a bombed-out building, bleeding, while enemy fighters closed in from 3 sides. I had a choice: risk the entire team trying to extract 2 wounded operatives, or complete the mission and abandon them. The intelligence we were carrying could prevent a chemical weapons attack on a refugee camp. 30,000 civilians, including children. I made the call. We had to leave them, I tell Alden. The intelligence we were carrying was too critical. I gave the order to abort extraction. His face goes pale. You left them behind. I ordered the team to fall back to secondary extraction point. Torres and Jenkins. They knew what it meant. The radio crackled to life as we reached the extraction zone. Torres's voice steady despite the pain. Command, this is Bravo 2. We see you leaving. Background noise, gunfire, shouting in Arabic, the sound of boots on rubble. Then Jenkins's voice clearer. Tell them we didn't run. The transmission cut to static. 3 minutes later, the building exploded. Official report: Technical Sergeant Michael Torres and Corporal Sarah Jenkins died heroically while providing cover for a successful intelligence operation. Their sacrifice prevented civilian casualties and disrupted enemy chemical weapons capabilities. Unofficial truth: I abandoned 2 of my people to save a mission. The chemical weapons intelligence was solid, I continue. We prevented that attack, saved those civilians. But Torres and Jenkins died because I chose the mission over my team. Alden is quiet for a long moment. When he speaks, his voice is softer. That's why you were listed as KIA. Cover story: to protect the operation, but also to protect you. Dead operatives don't face court-martial for abandoning wounded soldiers. Dead operatives also don't have to live with the choices they made. He's right. Death would have been simpler. An hour later, I'm alone in the temporary quarters they've assigned me on base. A small room with military-standard furniture and a window that overlooks the parade ground where I once learned to march in formation. The manila envelope is waiting on my bunk. No return address. No postal markings. Someone placed it here while I was in the courtroom. Someone with access to secure base housing. Inside, I find 3 items. A system access log dated 2 years ago, showing unauthorized entry into classified drone protocol databases. The login credentials are highlighted in yellow DMADOX MEDJ. A series of redacted communications between various intelligence agencies discussing security vulnerabilities in unmanned aircraft systems. Several passages are circled in red ink. A forensic trace report linking the unauthorized access to specific classified documents that were later found in unsecured locations. Daniel's digital fingerprints are all over this, but something doesn't fit. The timestamps show the access occurred during a 3-day period when Daniel was attending a training exercise at Fort Leavenworth. I remember because he'd complained about missing his wedding anniversary for mandatory education credits. I study the logs more carefully. The IP address traces back to a computer terminal in the base communications center, but the access pattern is wrong. Too methodical. Too thorough. Someone was searching for specific information, not browsing randomly. More importantly, the search queries are too sophisticated. Daniel's technical skills are adequate for a field officer, but these searches require knowledge of database architecture and classification systems that go well beyond his training. Someone used his credentials, but it wasn't Daniel. I spread the documents across the small desk looking for patterns. The redacted communications mention vulnerabilities that could compromise ongoing operations in 3 different theaters. The kind of information that would be invaluable to foreign intelligence services. This isn't just about mishandling classified documents. This is about espionage. The real question is who wanted Daniel to take the fall and why I lean back in the government issue chair, staring at the evidence that will either destroy my brother or reveal something much larger. Outside, the base settles into evening routine, the distant sound of taps playing the measured footsteps of guards on patrol. Somewhere in this maze of documents and digital breadcrumbs is the truth. But truth I've learned is a luxury that intelligence operatives rarely get to enjoy. Tomorrow I'll start looking for answers. Tonight I'll listen to the ghosts of Torres and Jenkins reminding me that some choices never stop echoing. I spend the night with my laptop and a secure connection that still recognizes my credentials after all these years. The beauty of intelligence work is that once you're in the system, you're never really out. Classifications expire, but access codes have longer memories. My first call is to Marcus Webb, a cyber intelligence analyst I worked with during the Ukrainian operations. He owes me 3 favors, and tonight I'm collecting one. Claire fucking Maddox, he says, when he picks up voice thick with sleep. Do you know what time it is? Time for you to earn that recommendation letter I wrote when you wanted a transfer to NSA. He's awake now. What do you need? Deep dive on a security breach. Military intelligence databases, drone protocols, Fort Bragg origin point. I need audit trails, user logs, everything. That's not a favor, that's a career suicide pact. Marcus, I let silence do the work. He sighs. Send me what you have. Give me 6 hours. While I wait, I use my own access to dig through the military personnel database. Daniel's service record is clean, exemplary even. No disciplinary actions, no security violations, no red flags until this current mess. But buried in the routine administrative entries, I find something interesting, a request for guest system access filed 18 months ago. The sponsor was listed as Colonel Roy Maddox, retired. My father. The request was approved for familial career guidance consultation, military speak for a father helping his son navigate promotion requirements. It granted temporary access to non-classified personnel and training records. My phone buzzes at 0400. Marcus, right on schedule. Your brother didn't do this, he says without preamble. The digital signature is all wrong. Whoever used his credentials knows enough to navigate classified systems, but made rookie mistakes in covering their tracks. What kind of mistakes? Cached search histories, uncleared browsing data, cookie trails. It's like someone who understands the front end but doesn't know how the back end logging works. Send me everything. The files arrive encrypted, requiring 3 different passwords and a biometric scan to open. Marcus doesn't mess around with operational security. The evidence tells a story someone accessed Daniel's account credentials and used them to query classified drone databases. But the search patterns show a specific target, not random browsing or systematic espionage. The user was looking for something particular. More importantly, the access trail shows the real user logged in through a guest terminal, using outdated authentication protocols, the kind of system access my father's clearance level would have provided. I cross-referenced the timestamps with base personnel logs. During each unauthorized access, Sergeant Kevin Miles was logged into the communications center. Miles, an IT specialist with 15 years of experience and a spotless record. A few more phone calls to old contacts, some gentle pressure applied to friends who still owe me favors, and I have Miles's complete service jacket. No red flags, no security violations, no indication he's anything other than a dedicated soldier who maintains computer systems and follows orders. But there's something else in his file, a commendation letter from my father dated 6 months ago, praising Miles for exceptional technical support during sensitive administrative review. The pieces start forming a pattern. At 0800, I'm waiting outside the base communications center when Sergeant Miles arrives for his shift. He's younger than I expected, maybe 30, with the careful precision of someone who spends his days making sure other people's technology works properly. Sergeant Miles. I approach with my temporary visitor badge, visible, keeping my voice casual. I'm Claire Maddox. I wondered if I could ask you a few questions about system access protocols. His expression shifts immediately, recognition, then wariness, then something close to panic. Ma'am, If this is about the security investigation, I've already given my statement to the investigators. I'm not here officially, I'm here as Daniel's sister. That relaxes him slightly, but his shoulders remain tense. Could we talk privately? He leads me to a small office inside the communications center, closing the door behind us. The room hums with the white noise of servers and cooling systems. Sergeant, I need to understand what happened. Not for the investigation, but for my family. He's quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. Your father came to me about 8 months ago, he says finally. Said Daniel had some training records that needed to be cleaned up. Nothing serious, just administrative errors that could affect his promotion board. What kind of errors? Colonel Maddox said there was a training mishap during a joint exercise. Something about classified protocols being mishandled during a simulation. He wanted to make sure it didn't show up in Daniel's permanent record. I keep my expression neutral, but internally I'm connecting dots. My father trying to protect Daniel's career. Using his outdated access and Miles's technical expertise to clean up what he thought was a minor administrative problem. He asked you to help. Yes, ma'am. I mean, Colonel Maddox has always been good to me. Helped me get my current assignment, wrote recommendations for my technical certifications. When he asked for a favor, you said yes. Miles nods miserably. He gave me Daniel's login credentials, said he'd already cleared it with his son. Asked me to access the training databases and remove any references to the incident. But you accessed the wrong databases. I thought I was looking at training records, but some of the files were cross-referenced to operational databases. When I opened them, they triggered security flags I didn't even know existed. The picture becomes clear. My father acting with good intentions but outdated knowledge of current security protocols. Miles following orders from a respected superior without understanding the full implications. Neither of them realizing that the systems had been upgraded with automated monitoring that would flag any unusual access patterns. Did you find the training mishap records? Miles shakes his head. That's the thing, ma'am. I never found any record of Daniel being involved in a training incident. But by then I'd already accessed the classified files. The damage was done. And you didn't tell anyone. Colonel Maddox asked me to keep it quiet. Said it was family business, and involving investigators would just embarrass everyone unnecessarily. He looks up at me, eyes filled with guilt. I should have reported it immediately. I know that now. I stand to leave, then turn back. Sergeant, one more question. Did my father ever explain what this training mishap was supposed to be? He said Daniel had accidentally accessed some drone protocol files during a simulation exercise. Said it was the kind of mistake that could ruin a good officer's career over a technicality. Outside the communication center, I sit in my rental car and stare at the evidence spread across my laptop screen. The timeline is clear now. My father, worried about Daniel's career prospects, tried to help by covering up what he thought was a minor training violation. Instead, he created the very security breach that's now destroying Daniel's career. The irony is devastating. In trying to protect his son, my father ensured his downfall. But there's still one question that bothers me. If the training mishap never happened, why did my father think it did? Who told him Daniel needed help covering up a mistake that never occurred? The answer to that question, I suspect, will lead me to whoever orchestrated this entire situation. I sit in my rental car outside the base commissary at Uro 600 watching early morning joggers pass in formation. The evidence is spread across my passenger seat like tarot cards, predicting disaster. Each document, each digital trail, each timestamp points to the same devastating conclusion: my father destroyed Daniel's career while trying to save it. The choice before me is surgical in its cruelty. Option 1, expose everything. Show the court-martial board that Colonel Roy Maddox retired, used his outdated clearance and an unsuspecting IT specialist to access classified systems. Prove that Daniel never touched those files, never violated security protocols, never committed the crimes that will send him to military prison. My father would be arrested within hours, charged with unauthorized access to classified systems, conspiracy, obstruction of justice. His retirement would be stripped, his pension revoked, his reputation destroyed. At 71 years old, he'd face federal prosecution and the complete annihilation of everything he'd spent 4 decades building. But Daniel would be free. Option 2, stay silent. Let the court-martial proceed. Let Daniel be convicted for crimes he didn't commit. Let him spend the next 10 years in prison while I carry the truth like a tumor. My brother would be destroyed, but my father would be protected from the consequences of his misguided attempt to help. Both choices require sacrificing someone I love to save someone else I love. I've made impossible decisions before. In Syria, in Ukraine, in a dozen other places, where moral clarity dissolved into competing necessities. But those decisions involved strangers, enemies, people whose faces I could forget in the spaces between sleeping and waking. This is different. This is family. I close my eyes and let the memories surface. Christmas dinners where Daniel's achievements filled every conversation while my empty chairs spoke of disappointment. Family photos where I'd been cropped out to balance the frame. 24 years of being the daughter they'd rather forget. If I exposed my father, I would be right. Morally, legally, ethically correct. Justice would be served, truth would prevail, and Daniel would walk free. But I'd also fracture what little remained of our family. My mother would never forgive me for destroying her husband. Daniel might be grateful, but he'd also know that his freedom came at the cost of our father's ruin. Every family gathering, every holiday, every moment we shared would carry the weight of what I'd done. If I stayed quiet, I'd be complicit in a lie. I'd watch my brother go to prison for crimes he didn't commit while I carried the knowledge that could set him free. I'd become the keeper of a secret that would corrode everything decent left inside me. Neither choice offers redemption. Neither choice offers peace. So I choose the third path, the one that lets truth speak without forcing anyone to pay its full price, the one that saves Daniel without destroying my father, the one that requires me to carry the weight of both their secrets forever. Even if it means I become the ghost at every family gathering, even if it means I disappear completely from their lives, even if it means accepting that love sometimes requires becoming invisible. At 80800, I'm back in the communications center. Not to see Sergeant Miles, but to use the secure terminals that still recognize my intelligence credentials. The same systems that my father inadvertently compromised now serve as the instrument of revelation. I craft the anonymous submission with surgical precision. No names, no direct accusations, just digital breadcrumbs that will lead investigators to the truth without identifying the source. A systems audit trail that shows anomalous access patterns. Login discrepancies that suggest credential compromise. Forensic evidence that proves the unauthorized access came from someone with administrative privileges, not operational clearance. The beauty of intelligence work is that truth doesn't need attribution to be effective. Sometimes the most powerful revelations come from shadows. I route the submission through 3 different proxy servers, encrypt it with protocols that would take NSA months to crack, and send it directly to the Judge Advocate General's Cybercrimes Division. Not to Lieutenant Colonel Reynolds, who would see it as an attack on his case, but to the independent investigators who care more about truth than conviction rates. Then I wait. The call comes at 1400. Colonel Alden's voice is carefully neutral when he asks me to meet him at the courthouse. No explanation, no context, just a request that feels more like a summons. I find him in the same conference room where we'd talked about Firelight. He's not alone. A woman in civilian clothes sits across from him, her laptop open, her expression unreadable. Ms. Maddox, Alden says, "This is Agent Sarah Parker from the Defense Criminal Investigative Service. We've received some new information about your brother's case." Agent Parker slides a tablet across the table. The screen shows a forensic analysis report dated 3 hours ago. Digital evidence proving that Daniel's credentials were compromised, that the unauthorized access came from someone with administrative privileges, that the security breach was caused by outdated protocols and well-intentioned incompetence rather than malicious intent. The evidence clearly shows Major Maddox's innocence, Parker says. The real question is where this information came from. She looks directly at me, her eyes sharp with professional curiosity. Someone with significant technical expertise and high-level access conducted this analysis. Someone who cares enough about justice to risk their own security clearance by investigating classified systems without authorization. I meet her gaze without flinching. That's an interesting theory. It's more than a theory. The digital signature on this analysis matches patterns we've seen in intelligence community investigations, specifically patterns associated with covert operations specialists. Alden leans forward. "Claire, did you?" "I'm a civilian," I interrupt. "I work in administrative support. I wouldn't know how to conduct this kind of analysis." The lie tastes like copper on my tongue, but it's necessary. Truth has many faces, and sometimes the most important truths require the protection of smaller deceptions. Agent Parker closes her laptop. Regardless of the source, this evidence exonerates Major Maddox. The charges will be dropped within the hour. After they leave, I sit alone in the conference room, staring at my reflection in the blank computer screen. Daniel will be free, but the investigation will continue. Eventually, they'll trace the security breach to its source. Eventually, my father will face consequences for his actions, but not today, not directly from me. Today I've chosen to let truth speak, while keeping my hands clean of its aftermath. The weight of that choice settles across my shoulders like a familiar coat. Heavy but not unbearable. After all, I've been carrying impossible secrets for 24 years. What's one more? The courtroom empties with the subdued efficiency of a deflated balloon. No celebration, no vindication speeches, just the quiet shuffle of people who came expecting drama and received bureaucratic resolution instead. All charges dismissed, General Morrison had announced. Major Maddox, you are free to return to duty, pending administrative review. Daniel stood when his name was called, shoulders straightening as invisible weight lifted from them. But his eyes found mine across the courtroom, filled with questions I couldn't answer and gratitude I didn't deserve. I slipped out during the handshakes and congratulations before my parents could approach, before anyone could ask how I'd known to attend a court-martial that everyone expected me to avoid. Back in my temporary quarters, I should feel satisfied. Justice served truth, revealed family preserved. Instead, I feel the familiar emptiness that follows completed missions, the hollow sensation of problems solved and purposes fulfilled. I'm packing my laptop when curiosity gets the better of me. The manila envelope from last night sits on the desk, its contents now irrelevant, but its origin still mysterious. Someone with base access had placed it there while I was in court. Someone who wanted me to have those documents. My intelligence training never really fades. Operational security becomes instinct, and instinct demands answers to questions that logic says don't matter anymore. The envelope itself yields nothing standard military stationery, no fingerprints, no distinctive markings. But the documents inside carry digital metadata that tells a different story. I connect to the secure network and trace the document histories. The access logs were printed from a terminal in the base administrative offices. The communications intercepts were downloaded from an intelligence archive that requires clearance I didn't know was still active. But it's the routing information that stops me cold. Buried in the network traffic logs, masked behind 3 proxy servers, and a VPN that would fool most investigators, is a login signature. Faint, easily missed, probably accidental. Maddox.M47 Army Mill, my mother's email address. I stare at the screen for a full minute, certain I've made a mistake. My mother, Marilyn Maddox, the woman who spent 30 years saying little and observing everything. The combat medic who treated wounds without flinching but never spoke about the battles that caused them. The woman who sat in courtrooms and said nothing while her children's lives hung in the balance. She sent me the evidence that started this entire investigation. 20 minutes later, I find her in the base commissary sitting alone at a corner table with a cup of coffee and a newspaper she's not reading. She looks up when I approach, no surprise in her eyes, as if she's been expecting this conversation. Mind if I sit? She gestures to the empty chair across from her. I sit, order coffee from the passing waitress, and wait. Patience is an intelligence officer's greatest weapon. The case was dismissed, I say finally. I heard. Her voice is steady, neutral. Daniel's free. Thanks to anonymous evidence that appeared at exactly the right moment. She sips her coffee, eyes focused on something beyond my shoulder. It was you who sent the envelope. I say, not a question. She's quiet for so long, I wonder if she's going to answer at all. Then softly, I didn't know who else would believe it. The admission hangs between us like a bridge neither of us is sure we want to cross. How long have you known about your father's involvement since it happened? He told me what he'd done, asked me to help him figure out how to fix it without destroying Daniel. She meets my eyes for the first time. About you, since Syria. That stops me cold. Syria. A colonel named Marcus Webb called the house in 2012. He was drunk, calling to express condolences about Operation Candlestrike. Said he couldn't believe Claire Maddox was dead, that you were the best intelligence officer he'd ever worked with. My blood turns to ice water. Webb calling my parents to offer sympathy for my supposed death. Not knowing the cover story was meant to protect my operational status, not comfort my family. I hung up on him, she continues. But I started paying attention, small things. News reports from places you'd supposedly been. Casualty lists that didn't include your name. Operations that succeeded in ways that matched your tactical style. You never said anything. What was I supposed to say? That I suspected my daughter was alive but working in operations so classified she had to be dead to everyone who loved her. Her voice carries 20 years of accumulated pain. I couldn't save you back then, Claire. Couldn't protect you from choices that required you to disappear from your own life. She reaches across the table, her fingers brushing mine briefly before withdrawing. So I tried to help both of you in the only way I could. Quietly. The coffee tastes bitter on my tongue. All these years I thought I'd been invisible to my family. Thought they'd forgotten me, dismissed me, written me off as a failure. But my mother had been watching, knowing, carrying the weight of my secret, along with the grief of my supposed death. I won't forget what Dad did, I say carefully. And I won't forget that you knew and stayed silent. She nods once, accepting the judgment without argument. But I understand why you did it. Understanding isn't forgiveness. Understanding isn't reconciliation, but it's something. A thread connecting two women who spent decades learning how to love each other from a distance. She stands to leave, then pauses. Your father doesn't know I sent you the evidence. He doesn't know I know about your real work. And Daniel. Daniel thinks he was lucky. Sometimes lucky is easier than truth. She walks away, leaving me alone with cold coffee and the recognition that families keep secrets from each other not just to inflict harm, but sometimes to prevent it. In intelligence work, we call it compartmentalization. In families, we call it love. Both require the same sacrifice, carrying knowledge that isolates you from the people you're trying to protect. The invitation comes 3 days after Daniel's case is dismissed. A formal request on strategic command letterhead signed by General Morrison herself. Your expertise is requested for operational debrief regarding recent security protocols review. I almost don't go. 24 years of invisible service, and now they want to debrief me like I'm a returning asset who needs processing. The irony tastes bitter, but curiosity wins over pride, and at 1400 hours, I'm sitting in a conference room that smells like fresh paint and ambition. The kind of room where careers are made and policies are written by people who've never had to implement them in places where failure means death. General Morrison sits at the head of the table, flanked by Colonel Alden and a woman I don't recognize, mid-40s civilian clothes. The kind of calculated composure that screams senior intelligence analyst. Ms. Maddox. Morrison begins, "Thank you for joining us. This is Dr. Catherine Ross from Defense Intelligence Agency. We've been reviewing the circumstances surrounding your brother's case, and some irregularities have come to light." Dr. Ross opens a tablet, slides it toward me. The screen shows a forensic analysis of the anonymous intelligence submission that cleared Daniel. Digital fingerprints, routing protocols, encryption signatures. Someone with extensive intelligence training conducted this investigation, Ross says. Someone with access to classified systems and the technical expertise to navigate them without leaving traditional audit trails. I keep my expression neutral. That's interesting. It's more than interesting, Alden interjects. It's professionally executed intelligence work, conducted by someone who wanted justice but didn't want credit. Morrison leans forward. We know it was you, Claire. The words hang in the air like a challenge. I could deny it, maintain the fiction that I'm just a civilian administrative worker who happened to attend her brother's court-martial. But there's something in Morrison's expression, not accusation, but recognition. Hypothetically, I say carefully, if someone with intelligence background wanted to ensure justice was served, what would be the consequences? Hypothetically, Morrison replies, matching my tone, that someone might find herself facing charges for unauthorized access to classified systems. Silence settles over the room like dust. Or, Ross continues, that someone might find herself offered a position where such skills could be used legally and productively. Now I'm listening. Alden slides a folder across the table. Inside is a job description that makes my pulse quicken, despite myself Senior Analyst Combat Intelligence Reform Initiative. Based in Washington, reporting directly to the Joint Chiefs. Salary range that suggests they're serious about attracting talent. The military intelligence community needs reform, Morrison says. Too many protocols developed in isolation, too many security measures that prioritize secrecy over effectiveness. We need someone who understands both the operational reality and the institutional politics. Someone who's survived both combat operations and bureaucratic warfare, Ross adds. I flip through the job description. It's everything I've wanted for 20 years, the chance to fix the system from inside, to ensure that future operatives don't face the same impossible choices that defined my career. But there's a catch. There's always a catch. What's the real scope of this position, I ask. Morrison and Ross exchange glances. Alden clears his throat. Complete review of intelligence protocols, security classifications, and operational transparency standards, with authority to recommend changes at the highest levels, including examining cases like Operation Firelight. The temperature in the room drops 10 degrees, including, Morrison says carefully, examining whether current classification protocols serve national security or simply protect institutional embarrassment. They're offering me the chance to rewrite the rules that buried me, to ensure that future operatives don't disappear into classified shadows, don't become ghosts in their own families' lives. But they're also asking me to examine the very operations that made me who I am, to potentially expose missions that were kept secret for legitimate reasons. I close the folder, lean back in my chair. I'll consider it, I say, but only under 2 conditions. Morrison nods for me to continue. First, complete authority to implement ethics training programs, not just for operatives, but for commanders who make decisions about classification levels and family notification protocols. Agreed. Second, a complete rewrite of protocol transparency standards. Families deserve to know their loved ones died as heroes, not failures, even if the missions stay classified. Ross makes notes on her tablet. That would require significant policy changes. Then change them. Morrison stands, extends her hand. Welcome to Strategic Command, Ms. Maddox. Your first briefing is Monday. I shake her hand, feeling the weight of institutional authority for the first time in my adult life. It's terrifying and exhilarating and long overdue. Later that week, I'm packing my apartment in Alexandria when the mail arrives. Mixed in with bills and advertisements is a hand-addressed envelope with my father's careful script. Inside a single sheet of paper. No greeting, no signature, just 4 lines that carry the weight of 24 years. I didn't know who you were, and I think that scared me. A daughter who could survive what you survived shouldn't have had to survive our silence too. You deserved better than we gave you. I read it twice, then fold it carefully and place it in the wooden box with my Operation Firelight patch. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. Not reconciliation, but recognition. Some bridges can't be rebuilt, but sometimes you can at least see across the gap. My phone buzzes with a text from Daniel. Heard about your new job. Mom says you're moving to DC. Maybe we could get dinner sometime. I owe you more than I can say. I type back, let's start with coffee. Small steps. Because that's how you rebuild a family, not with grand gestures or dramatic reconciliations, but with quiet conversations over bitter coffee. With the slow work of learning to see each other as we really are, not as we wished we were. Tomorrow I start the work of reforming the system that shaped me. Tonight I allow myself to hope that the woman who emerges from the shadows might finally find a place in the light. 6 months later, I'm standing in front of 43 students at the Fort Bragg Intelligence Training Center. The classroom smells like fresh whiteboard markers and nervous energy. Young faces stare back at me, most of them barely old enough to vote, all of them eager to prove themselves worthy of the uniforms they wear. Ethics in Intelligence Operations. I announce, writing the course title on the board. Day 1. In the front row, Daniel sits at attention. He's wearing captain's bars, now the demotion that came with his administrative review. A step down from major, but still here, still serving, still believing in something larger than himself. He requested transfer to intelligence training 6 weeks after his court-martial was dismissed. Said he wanted to understand the systems he'd been accused of compromising. I suspect there's more to it than that. Some need to comprehend how close he came to losing everything and why. Before we discuss operational protocols, I continue. I want to establish one fundamental principle. Intelligence work is not about secrets. It's about truth. The secret is just the package truth comes wrapped in. A young lieutenant in the third row raises her hand. Ma'am, isn't that contradictory? If we're revealing truth, why the secrecy? Good question, Lieutenant. I check my roster. Martinez? The answer is timing and context. Truth revealed at the wrong moment to the wrong audience can kill the people you're trying to protect. I click to the first slide of my presentation, a map of Syria circa 2011 with operational zones marked in different colors. Operation Candle Strike. Classified mission to extract intelligence assets from Aleppo. The truth was that we saved 37 civilians from a chemical weapons attack. The secret was how we obtained that intelligence. Daniel's posture shifts almost imperceptibly. This is the first time he's hearing details about my actual service record. The families of the operatives involved were told their loved ones died in a training accident. For 20 years, they believed their sons and daughters failed at something routine and mundane. I advanced to the next slide. Photos of Sergeant Torres and Corporal Jenkins, the two operatives I left behind. These soldiers died heroes, but their families were never allowed to know that, because revealing the truth would have compromised ongoing operations and endangered other assets. The room is completely silent now. Even Daniel has stopped taking notes. The question we face as intelligence professionals is this: at what point does protecting operational security become protecting institutional comfort? When does necessary secrecy become cruel erasure? For the next 2 hours, we work through case studies, ethical dilemmas with no clean solutions, scenarios where every choice carries moral weight that will follow you home. I watch their faces as the complexity sinks in. The realization that intelligence work isn't about being the hero in a clear-cut narrative. It's about making impossible choices and learning to sleep afterward. At the end of the session, a young cadet raises his hand. Private Collins, according to my roster. Maybe 19 years old, with the kind of earnest expression that reminds me why this work matters. "Ma'am," he says, voice slightly nervous, "what's the hardest part of combat?" The question hits me like a physical blow, not because it's unexpected, but because I know the answer with absolute certainty. I set down my marker, turn to face the class fully. Surviving what they never see, I say. Not the bullets, not the explosions, not the physical danger that makes for good war movies. The room is so quiet I can hear the ventilation system humming. The hardest part is surviving the absence of belief, coming home to people who love you but can't understand what you've done, who you've become, why you made the choices you made. Living with the knowledge that your greatest victories will never be celebrated, your worst failures will never be mourned publicly. Daniel's pen has stopped moving entirely. Combat is temporary. Missions end. But carrying secrets that isolate you from everyone you care about, that's permanent. That changes who you are in ways that don't heal. Private Collins nods slowly, like he's filing this information away for future reference. That's why this class exists, I continue. Not to teach you how to keep secrets, but how to carry them without losing yourself. After dismissal, I gather my materials while students file out. Daniel lingers until we're alone. "Claire," he starts, then stops, tries again. "I never knew. You weren't supposed to know. That was the point." "Ah. But the cost was mine to pay." I zip up my laptop bag, meet his eyes. "The question is whether future operatives should have to pay the same price." He nods, understanding finally dawning. Walking through the corridors afterward, I pass the gallery of distinguished alumni. Framed photographs line both walls, officers who've graduated from Fort Bragg's various programs and gone on to distinguished careers. Daniel's photo is there from his original commissioning. Dress, uniform, proud smile, the confident expression of someone who believes the world makes sense. Next to his frame is an empty slot, just a placeholder with a small brass nameplate, "Reserved." I stop staring at the vacant space. For a moment, I imagine my own photograph there. Official portrait ribbons and decorations, recognition for service that actually mattered. Then I smile. Not with warmth, not with bitterness, but with the quiet satisfaction of someone who's learned the difference between being seen and being understood. The empty frame doesn't represent my absence. It represents possibility. Someday, when the classifications expire and the operational security concerns fade, there might be space for stories like mine. But not yet. And maybe that's okay. I walk on my footsteps, echoing in the empty corridor. Behind me, 43 students are heading back to their barracks, carrying new questions about truth and secrecy, about service and sacrifice. Tomorrow, I'll teach them about operational planning. Next week, we'll cover asset management and intelligence analysis. But today, I taught them the most important lesson of all, that heroism often looks like absence, and that sometimes the greatest service is the kind that no one ever sees. The hallway stretches ahead, leading toward an exit I can see, but haven't reached yet. I keep walking. So that's my story, not the version my family told at dinner parties. Not the one that appeared in official records, but the truth that lived in the spaces between what people knew and what they assumed. They told everyone I failed. Said I couldn't handle officer candidate school, couldn't cut it in the real military, couldn't measure up to the family tradition of service and sacrifice. What they didn't say was what I survived. 24 years in the shadows, carrying out missions that prevented attacks, saved lives, and protected national security in ways that will never appear in history books. Operations so classified that my own death had to be faked to maintain their secrecy. I survived roadside bombs in Syria, interrogations in Libya, months of isolation so complete, I forgot the sound of my own voice. I made decisions that haunted me, leaving behind wounded soldiers to protect a mission that saved thousands of civilians. I carried the weight of necessary choices that no one else could understand. But the hardest thing I survived wasn't combat. It was coming home to silence. It was watching my family celebrate my brother's accomplishments while erasing me from photographs. It was sending birthday cards into a void and receiving nothing in return. You don't always get medals for surviving that kind of absence. Sometimes the only proof is that you're still standing. I'm telling you this not because I need validation or sympathy. I'm telling you because I suspect some of you know what it feels like to be written out of your own story. Maybe not in the military, maybe not with classified operations, but in ways that cut just as deep. Maybe you're the sibling who took a different path and became invisible at family gatherings. Maybe you're the one who made sacrifices nobody noticed, who fought battles nobody acknowledged, who succeeded in ways that don't translate to bragging rights. Maybe you know what it's like to be essential to a story while being absent from its telling. If this resonates with something in your own life, if you've ever been pushed to the margins of your own narrative, made to feel like your choices were failures instead of different kinds of courage, I want you to know that I'm listening. Your story matters. Your sacrifices count. Your survival is proof of strength even when nobody sees it. Drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from, or just let me know you're here. Sometimes knowing you're heard is what makes it possible to keep going. Sometimes recognition doesn't come from the people who should give it. It comes from strangers who understand what it means to carry invisible weight. I spent 2 decades believing I was alone in my silence. But stories like mine exist because stories like yours exist. We're connected by the quiet understanding that some of the most important work happens where no one is watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for seeing me when my own family couldn't. And if you found something here that felt familiar, that reminded you of your own invisible battles, share this story. Let other people know they're not alone in their silence. Sometimes the greatest service we can perform is simply witnessing each other's truth. That's enough for today. That's enough for now. But it's a beginning, not an ending. Your turn to speak. I'm listening.